You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
Welcome to the show, everybody. That is the Capitalist Corner. I'm glad to have everybody here. I am your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I am also the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, but the show has no affiliation with the party. I am also the host of the Rational Egoist podcast. There's an episode out right now that I did with philosopher Andrew Bernstein, where we review the movie $1 Million Baby. Great movie, great discussion with Andy. As you can see, Mark Pellegrino is not here again today. He is working, he is filming, and he's grieving the love of his beloved Frankie. And everybody just continue to send him your well wishes, send him your thoughts. He could really use them. He's holding up, but as we can all imagine, he's in a lot of pain right now. Before we get into the show, please remember to like the episode and please remember to share it from YouTube. It helps with the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And after the show, go to YouTube, leave your comments. So the first thing I want to discuss today is Jimmy Kimmel is going to be returning to ABC to do his show. I guess Sinclair and Nexstar have both said they are not going to put him back on their local ABC affiliates. I don't really care that he's back on, or that Nexstar and Sinclair aren't allowing him on. To me, the issue has always been the fact that the head of the FCC issued veiled threats and said we can do this the easy way or the hard way. That was the problem from the get-go. The problem is you have a president of the United States running around saying that networks should lose their licenses because they give him negative coverage. So government force here is the problem. If ABC reinstated him, despite the threats, I'm glad that they're not cowing, but at the same time, I don't blame them if they did. I mean, it's a tough situation. I wouldn't begrudge somebody handing over their wallet when somebody puts a gun to their head either, but I would commend them if they defied the person and showed bravery. And the same goes for Sinclair and Nexstar. If they're on principle not putting him back on, that's their right. I have no issue with that. The issue is censorship. Now, this morning, there was an article in Reason magazine about this, about the public interest criteria. And it referenced an essay by Ayn Rand from 1962 called Have Gun, Will Nudge. And so the idea of the article was to say somebody is voluntarily acting, even though there's not explicit censorship, is the equivalent of saying that somebody's voluntarily acting at when somebody points a gun to them and says, give me your money, and you do. Ayn Rand does numerous things in this essay that I think are phenomenal. The first thing she does is she separates political from economic power. She demonstrates that there's a difference between the government threatening to censor somebody or to hand out consequences to somebody, and a private company refusing to platform somebody. The former is censorship. The latter is not. And it's a very important distinction to make, because only the government, in the sense we're using it, can censor people because they have force behind them that allows them to do that. Another thing that Miss Rand did was demonstrate that it doesn't have to be explicit censorship in order for it to be censorship. A simple, yes, you're going to be punished. We might think about punishing you, or something might happen. That's enough, especially because it could be a family member of the head of the FCC that tells somebody in a one-off conversation, hey, listen, you might want to cut this out. As long as we allow the government to do this, we have a serious problem on our hands. And that was Rand's point. And in the context that she wrote it, it was the FCC head, Newton Minow, was saying that there needed to be more positive or educational children's programming on there, that the public interest matters. It's just not about serving whims. And Rand correctly points out that, well, the government is in no position to tell us what is good programming or not. They're not the arbiter. Individuals can choose. And she points out, look, if you're saying that people aren't smart enough to choose what programs they're going to watch, then how do you think they're smart enough to get involved in politics, to cast the vote? Another good point. But the full thrust of her argument, the greatest point she made, is the fiction of the public interest, that it's not a defined term, that if it was, it would have to be referring to everybody in the population, which it doesn't. What it refers to is the people that are selected by those in power to constitute the public, and then they decide on what their interest is. All of this is highly relevant today. I certainly hope that the FCC just stays out of this from now on. I doubt they will. I think we're going to see more of this in the future, but I hope not. So we've got some comments here. Let me just backtrack a little. Akira Felix says, I thought the FCC had decided not to follow up. I don't know what they've decided, but again, if I tell somebody, give me your money or I'm going to shoot you, and then afterwards I say, never mind, I'm not going to shoot you, the threat was already made. It's already there. Whether or not I decide to pull the trigger is irrelevant. The problem is with the threat, and that's the same issue here. Akira Felix also goes on to say Democrats don't impose the power of the FCC. No, they don't, but I don't see how that's relevant. When Joe Biden was jawboning social media companies, that's a problem. When Donald Trump was jawboning social media companies, that's a problem. This, to me, whenever someone says, well, the Democrats do it too, okay, all that tells me is that both parties suck. All that tells me is that both parties don't care about individual rights. They don't care about free speech. And we need to point that out every time it happens, not just when somebody that we happen to like or somebody that we happen to consider on our side does it. This is bad all the way around. Every time they do it, and to whatever degree that they do it. Let me see if there's anything else that we have here. I'm scrolling quickly. Let me look over here. Okay, that was stuff I already covered, so I don't need to cover it again. Let me see what other stories we got going on here. Oh, this is rich. Kamala Harris has a new book, and in this book, she talks about her differences with Joe Biden. She says that Joe Biden should not or should have shown more empathy for the deaths of Palestinian civilians, that he didn't. And she talked to him about it, and she tried to get him to, but he would not listen. It was problematic for her campaign. That this is one of the reasons she didn't pick Josh Shapiro. He, wasn't balanced enough, I guess, on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. What stands out to me, however, is not her position on it. Whatever. What stands out to me is first of all, the dishonesty and the cowardice, because at the time when she was questioned about this, her aide said, no, there's no daylight between her and President Biden. There's none at all. Okay, so then you were lying then. If you really believe that he was not showing sufficient empathy, and you said that wasn't true, that you didn't think, that, you're a liar. It's also extreme cowardice, because you wouldn't say it. Why? Because your political agenda would be hurt, because his political agenda would be hurt. We ought not be stating opinions based on political popularity or whether they help our political future. We ought to be stating positions that we hold to be true. I frequently get criticized on this very thing, that I'm making enemies. I'm turning people off with the things that I say sometimes. I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care. I don't care enough to elevate the concerns of being popular above the concerns of being truthful, because to me, being truthful is the correct position. also, the type of audience that I'm going to build by telling people what they want to hear is not the type of audience that I want. I want critical thinkers, people that want the truth, people that you want to have vigorous discussions, vigorous debates. They can agree with me when they do, disagree when they don't. That's what I want, but that's not what our politicians want. I think I may have told this story before, but I was incarcerated in the same prison that Michael Skakel was incarcerated in. Michael Skakel went to jail for the murder of Martha Moxley here in Connecticut. And he was a Kennedy cousin, and they used to come up to visit him. And he had a conversation with a friend of mine, and my friend wanted to talk politics with him. And Skakel said, "I don't really like politics." He said because he had worked on his Uncle Teddy's campaign, right? And during that time, he said they were basically like hooking people up to machines. They were trying to figure out what message was best. It wasn't about telling the truth. It wasn't about making the case. It was essentially about tricking people into voting for you. I also had another friend, Todd Feinberg, who used to work for Ed Markey, another Democrat, interesting, from the same state, from Massachusetts. And Ed Markey went out and he said something to people, and Todd said, "Hey, what were you saying there?" And Ed Markey said, no, I just gave him the old babidi babo, by which he meant he basically just sloughed him off with BS and moved on from it. That is exactly what we don't want from our politicians. And I can say definitively that we will never get that, or we will do our very best to never get that from a politician that represents the American Capitalist Party. Ariana Sneath says you can tell the truth and still be mindful about what words are being used. That's true, but it's also true that when you hyper focus on the words being used, there's a line that you can cross. It's a skill to not do so. I don't disagree with that. But if I'm in doubt ever, I would focus on the truth. Race Jacobson says, empathy is not a virtue. In this case, empathy is a vice. We shouldn't have empathy for murderers and terrorists. I'm inclined to agree with Race. I think he's right, but I don't think empathy is a bad thing. I think empathy ultimately is an emotion, and emotions follow from our convictions, from our values. And I think that if our values are on point, if our values correspond to reality, then the empathy that we have will be appropriate. If people didn't experience empathy, you'd be taking away a great incentive for helping people. I suppose one could argue that even a sociopath could come to the logical conclusion that him or her should be nice to people or kind to people. But the empathy helps. All emotions help. Emotions can be rewards or deterrents that we feel. They're part of the human experience. Chandler says you don't owe anybody the truth. Truth is something that you know. I think that truth is what's the word I'm looking for? Selfish virtue, for sure, Chandler. I don't know that you owe people to be openness, but I certainly think that you ought not to be trying to gain values from people by deceiving them. For instance, if I guess that would fit that I'm involved in a personal deal with them, though. If I was trying to sell them something, I have to be honest. But also, I think that when you're doing a show like this, there's an implied deal with the audience that you're going to tell them the truth. So I think you certainly owe your audience the truth. And as a politician, I think you have an implied deal with your constituents. So I would say you owe them the truth. Man Sharma says, empathy just means we can put ourselves in someone else's position, right? That doesn't mean giving mercy to someone, something, just understanding their perspective. It can help fix those issues. No. Empathy basically means to put yourself into the psychological and emotional position of somebody else. Yes, so it doesn't necessarily mean showing them mercy. You are correct. I think that Man Sharma is Manu, though. And why do we have different names? Am I wrong here? Am I getting confused as to who my people are? Someone straighten me out. Tell me something. I need to know something. Bonnie Bertrand says, I don't think empathy is being kind or nice to people. Isn't it being able to feel what they are feeling or understanding why they're feeling like that? Could be good or bad. Yes, that's true, Bonnie. All I'm saying is that it's an incentive to be nice. It's not actually being nice. But if for instance, if I have the right conclusions when it comes to ethics and I violate them, I'm going to feel guilt. Thus, the guilt is an added disincentive to be engaging in bad conduct. Similarly, if I have empathy for others, it serves as an additional incentive to treat them well, to be kind toward them. It should not be the determining factor, but it certainly is there. Okay, so who is Man Sharma? Can someone tell me? I thought we had Man Sharma before, and she told us who she was. Megan Ribbon says, I am so sad for Mark. R.I.P. Frankie. Thank you very much, Megan. I know that, Mark really supports Mark really appreciates the support and all the kind words that come to him. Man Sharma, who are you? I know you've been here before. I just want to know who you are. Let's see what we got here. So from the Free Press, we have an article, and it says, as the United Nations General Assembly gets underway this week, Americans still see the organization as necessary but ineffective. A new Gallup poll found 60% said they see the UN as necessary, down from 85% in 1997, and 63% said it's doing a poor job of solving global problems. What I find interesting is people thinking it's necessary but doing a poor job. I don't know why we would still support it, but then again, I support the idea of government, and government's doing a poor job. So I suppose I could understand they think that there's such an agency is necessary. I'm curious what the audience thinks about this. Is the UN a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I find it problematic that we end up. Oh, Man Sharma. Yes, I know who you are. You're my boy. Yes, he said Zoom conversations with me. I didn't know you were here today. Man Sharma is wonderful. One of these days, I'm going to put him on here. He's a great guy, great thinker. I disagree with him frequently, but he's still a thinker. He's a smart kid, really good guy. I knew I remembered you from somewhere. Thank you very much. And he's a guy, and Manu is a woman, by the way, who is now smiling in her profile picture, which is very, very good. We want people to smile. We don't need unhappiness. We don't need gloomy people. We need smilers. I love smilers. So smile more often, but not in a sick, twisted way like Tucker Carlson does when he laughs. Give it a nice smile like that, Manu. Perfect. Anyway, so what do you guys think about the UN? I'm not an expert on the issue, so I'm not steadfast in my position, but I'm inclined to say that when you get into agreements and contracts and leagues with very evil people, which is what we do. I mean, the Security Council, the Permanent Security Council has Russia on it. When you think about the Human Rights Council, used to have Cuba on it. I don't know who's on it now, but these are clearly things that are, countries that are not good. So I don't like the idea of being in alliances with them. I don't like the idea that you have to go and talk with them and treat with them. So my inclination is to say that we should just withdraw from it. But I'm certainly open to argument, and I'd welcome them. I don't see any. Just the only thing I see in the comments here is that Trump just blasted the UN's ineffectiveness to their faces. Well, that's a good thing. I like blasting them. The problem is Trump has no principles by which to stand on. He's not doing it from a principle perspective. He's doing it from whim. And that is not a good thing. It's never good to act on whim or to think on whim. Unfortunately, I'm getting a phone call now that I was supposed to take, but I can't take it because I'm on the air. I hate when I get phone calls during the show. Hopefully they'll leave the voicemail message. Race Jacobson says he tries not to think about the UN. Race, by the way, I saw recently that you said that you were going to be deviating from politics and focusing on art. I wish you luck. Whenever I try to do that, I feel like I'm Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. You know, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in because inevitably somebody says something that I feel I have to comment on. That's a weird compulsion that I have too, where I feel like I've got to say something. Sometimes I can't let somebody be wrong. It's a strange thing. And somebody posted one time, you know, thank God for this great technology that allows us to speak to people all the way across the world. And I use it to argue with strangers on the internet. So I think I definitely fall into that camp. Let's see. Globalism equals giving the UN and other global agencies more political power over U.S. citizens. Oh, we have globalism means different things to different people. If by globalism we mean open borders and free trade, I'm all for it. If it means doing what I like numbers says, then I'm totally against it. It's one of those terms, though, I think that people get to use and they know that the audience is going to mean different things or interpret it in different ways. So they can be vague and get away with vague statements. So Nicole Hingle wants to know how I became such a skilled debater. Well, Nicole, thank you for the compliment. First of all, I've always liked to argue. I've had a natural inclination for it. So that's part of it. Also, I also have vowed not to talk about things that I don't understand or don't know about. I'm not going to get into an argument, for instance, about the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics. You know, that's not something I'm going to argue about. I know what it is. I have a basic understanding about it, but I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to debate it. So that's another thing. Also, I mean, I dedicated a lot of time to learning critical thinking, studying books on logic. For instance, Antony Flu's great book, How to Think Straight, is awesome. There's another book, I can't remember who wrote it, called Being Logical. I also read a book on the art of argumentation. Another great book is When Good Thinking Goes Wrong. I forget who wrote that too, but it's a book on critical thinking. It's excellent. Ayn Rand's Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology is also excellent because it helps one to learn to think in principle, which was phenomenal. Trying to think of some of the other economics books I find great at learning to think critically, to anticipate the unintended consequences of actions and what actually things imply. And Ian Gilmore makes a good point. I have great recall, and that's true. I mean, I'm very good at Jeopardy because the recall, it comes to me quickly. That's my strength. Now, if you ever see me try to build something, you'll see what is not my strength because I'm very mechanically inept. So let's put it to put it nicely. Also, I've done quite a bit of reading in rational emotive therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. They help you identify certain, I don't want to call them thinking errors, thinking distortions, they call them. And all of that has helped me to think clearly, to think logically about things. But it's really, it starts with a commitment. So I would probably score really high on the LSAT. I don't know. I got it at my GED, so I don't know. I never graduated high school. I was actually very bad in high school. So let me go see what else we got to have to talk about here. There was an article today in the Epoch Times. I pronounce it Epoch. Mark pronounces it Epic. I don't know what it means. Sebastian Scalora wants to come in and roast me with a quick Mike is not mechanically inclined. Feel free to roast me all you want. I am fine with it. I actually like it. Don Rickles is my favorite comedian. I like numbers as some people become lawyers at 50. I actually defended myself two separate occasions in court and did very well both times. Ra Hazam says, just be careful not to fall into rationalism with that pull to correct or argue polemics and reading logic books, which that field is rationalist heavy. Yes, I agree, Raz, that one ought not to find, and it will fall into rationalism. I think it's important to understand that our concepts are tied to reality, in that it is the reality of the situation that we're discussing and debating. So, anyways, in the Epic Times, it's the flawed logic of recognizing a Palestinian state. Now, Jim and I discussed this yesterday, and I agree that it's extremely flawed. These countries shouldn't be doing it. France is now getting in on the action. And the point that this guy in this article makes, he makes 2 points that are absolutely phenomenal. First of all, what government are they going to be recognizing when they talk about this, recognizing as an state? Is it Hamas? Is it Mahmoud Abbas? Is it, Fatah? Who's it going to be? And also, what are the borders of this state that they're going to recognize? So where are they going to say that Israel ends and Palestine begins? And how do they think they're going to impose that on an existing country that hasn't been conquered in war or anything else? I don't know. It seems extremely flawed to me. I thought that the article was good, and I think it's definitely worth reading, but it's behind a paywall, just so you know. Let me see what else I got here. In what Rush Limbaugh used to call his stack of stuff. So the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, says that all options are on the table to support Argentina's economy. Why? They said, well, Argentina is a strategical ally or some such thing, but I don't get why we are trying to help other countries' economies or why we interfere in our own economy. Let economies be free. If other countries don't have free economies, we can't force them to be, and we ought not to be subsidizing them so that we can help rescue them from their mistakes. The problem, I guess, is that Javier Milei, his party lost recent elections, so there's a fear that the policies he's trying to put in place, there's going to be a stall on them. But the economic growth is good over there since he's got some policies implemented. The inflation is way, way down. I think it was a high. It was at something like 26%. Now it's at 1.9%. So why the people of Argentina wouldn't see that is beyond me. But I think it comes back to what Ayn Rand always talked about. It's ethics. It's their ethical view of things. If there's a majority of the citizens don't respect individual rights and they believe in altruism, that's the type of politicians they're going to vote in, and that's the type of policies they are going to champion. Greg Doherty, one of my absolute favorite commenters, says a brighter view of the FCC attempting to censor the widespread recognition of the nature of the act may be what gave the network the confidence to reinstate Kimmel. Perhaps. Man Sharma says when the economic crisis ended, the Argentines started wanting free stuff again. Well, that certainly is a problem. Wanting free stuff is a problem, but there's also a problem that I've seen where people will think it's compassion, and they say things like, well, there needs to be help. A friend of mine recently posted on Facebook something about this, and people jumped in with it's compassionate to help the poor, to which he said, okay, then go help them. But the problem is it's not enough that they help people. They want to force others to help people. And that is really even more of a problem, I think, than just the people that want the free stuff. I mean, the people that want the free stuff is obviously bad. But when you have people that favor robbing others to help the third party, that kind of pushes you over the edge or crosses the goalpost into enacting those types of policies. Lee says she thought I was my favorite. Well, I am not going to get myself into any trouble here by commenting that. Lee, you are awesome. I saw your post on Instagram this morning, by the way. I liked it. It's a good post. Keep it up. Keep doing it. He says I like numbers, says those people do less private giving. Perhaps I believe that's true, but I'm not 100% on it. Race Jacobson says, so would it be fair to say they elected Milei because they had to and not because they wanted to? I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know. I often don't understand why people vote the way they do. They're often confused about what the politicians they're electing even stand for. They don't even know the policies. How many people say Trump is a capitalist? Trump is for the Constitution. He's for freedom, which is obviously not the case. But yet that is the claim. But the whole idea that all options are on the table. See, that's what I find really problematic, is this idea that the United States, all options are on the table to help them. I think that's a very, very poor decision to make. Yakub Puchala says, I think they elected Malay because they got desperate enough, and now he's not delivering instantly, so they lose patience. That could also be the case. Another article that I read this morning from Fusion, that they actually, it's a page put out by the American Institute for Economic Research. It's called Can Science Substantiate? And it's about transgenderism, intersectionality, that kind of thing. And he talks a lot about the scientific method, what it can and can't do, and how pre-scientific method we went by observations. He differentiates between sex and race, and why it's appropriate to have laws based on race, but not based on gender, that sort of thing. But to me, I'll be honest with the whole transgender thing. I just think the government should stay the hell out of it. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that men who want to be women are competing against women in sports. I don't particularly like it. I just don't think the government should be involved in it. I don't think the government should be involved in sports. I think then if it were private, people can make their own decisions. All the people who think that these men are actually women and want them competing in sports could compete with them, if they choose, and everybody else could decide not to. If the government stayed out of, restaurants, then restaurants could have bathrooms and say, this is our policy. People could either go or they don't go. And it could go on and on and on in any instance you could make. If it's private, people can decide on their own and the world can go on. But once the government's involved, now the government has to make the decision. Yes, they have to be allowed in bathrooms. No, they can't be allowed to share the bathrooms. There must be single bathrooms or whatever. Just keep the government out of it. There's simply no need to have them involved. But when people look to the government for all their solutions, that's when we end up with a whole bunch of conflict. And by the way, my personal perspective or my personal view on the transgender phenomenon, I think, yes, there's probably some social contagion going on. There's some trendiness to it. I think that a lot of people are born feeling that they are not in the right body or they are not born the right sex. That doesn't make them the opposite sex. I think if people want to say that they identify as the opposite sex, then that's what they are. There's somebody who says they identify as the opposite sex. It doesn't make them a woman if it's a man or a man if it's a woman. You're still that sex, but I don't care if they want to be called by a different name, if they want to dress a certain way. They're not hurting anybody. I'm not going to discriminate against them as far as buying from them, selling to them, or thinking they should be allowed in government buildings, whatever. I just think that individuals should be able to discriminate in this country if they so choose when it comes to their own time, effort, intelligence, whatever. They don't owe that to anybody, whether it be transgender person, Jewish person, black person, white person, whatever. People need to be free to make their own decisions. Man Sharma has really demonstrated his intelligence here. He says, I agree with Michael on this broadly. I've said in the past that the sure sign that somebody is smart is when they agree with me. Sure sign that they're off on an issue if they disagree with me. Something is, it's gone awry. Let's put it that way. Something has gone awry. I Like Numbers says transubstantiation is a Catholic doctrine. No, I know I Like Numbers. The article has it's a play on words. It's not actual transubstantiation. What it's talking about is substantiating the idea of transgenderism. Akira Felix says there's a good evolutionary psychology explanation for transsexualism. I think it's not complete BS like most evolutionary psychology. Okay, I'd say I'm going to check it out, but I'd like to, but I've got a lot to do, so I may not. Deeper with Diego says the entire reason Jordan Peterson is even a thing is the cause of this very issue up in Canada. Yeah, I've heard that. I was in prison at the time. So I wasn't around for the rise of Jordan, but I do know that when I've heard him, what I've heard him say, I'm not very impressed with. I don't find him to be an impressive figure. Oftentimes I find that happens, that when somebody's really popular, I just don't find them compelling or convincing. Let me see if I can't find something else in here. Oh, I got an email from somebody. I know you guys don't care about that, but oh, it's a good one too. Okay. I got confirmation about a well permit. I'm sure everybody's very fired up about that. Yeah, and you should be, because now that I have the well permit, just about at the point where I can submit my report. I also need to find out if an underground oil tank has ever been removed from that property. Scintillating stuff. Part of my job, I have to interact with local town halls, which are, government agencies. And I got to tell you, some of them are very nice to me, but there's some of them that really, really act as if I'm imposing on them by asking them to do their jobs. You call up and you say, hey, can I have this? And it's just like I've ruined their day. And I got to tell you, that's been my experience by and large with dealing with government agencies. All right, let me go back, see if we got anything else in here. I hope so, because I don't want to. There's a good article, but I think it's too much to cover. And it talks about the unprecedented nature of the Trump presidency. And I don't want to go over the particulars, but its point is that, yes, every administration has been doing this, and that it gets, it escalates. And that's the part of the problem with it, is that once you set the precedent, the next guy piggybacks, makes it grow. Next guy does the same. And I say next guy because we've had all men and we have no women presidents. Maybe Persephone will come to America and run. I don't know. She does a good job with this show and putting out the clips and whatnot. Maybe she'd make a good president. I don't know. I really don't know Persephone's political views. I just know the faces that she makes while the show is on and the reaction she has to the various things I say. And sometimes she just puts her hand over her face, like, I cannot believe he's saying this right now. Like what I'm going to say now, I want to know, show of not hands, comment, who in the audience bites their fingernails? Because I got to tell you, I was lied to about biting the fingernails. I've been biting my fingernails my whole life. I've never had a problem. But when I was a little kid, I was warned about all these devastating consequences that were going to come from biting my fingernails. Why do parents do that? Like, why lie to me about this? If it's not harmful, who cares that I'm doing it? Like, what's the difference? If it is harmful, well, then yeah, let's do away with it. But I'm not seeing any harm. Does anybody know of anybody that has ever suffered a negative consequence from biting their fingernails? Please tell me. I got to know, because I was told I was going to get worms. I could, I'm going to be deathly ill, that sort of thing. And nothing's ever happened. And I never stopped. When I was a kid, they even put this disgusting ointment on my fingernails thinking that was going to get me to stop. It didn't. Larry Green says, I don't need glasses. Actually, Larry, I do. I don't need them up close. I do need them for distance. So when I'm looking far away, I definitely need glasses. Raz Hazam says he tells his daughter, who is starting the habit, that if she wants nice nails to be painted like mama, she shouldn't chew them. Well, that's legitimate. That's a good point. A girl one time told me, she said, Mike, your fingernails look awful. You have to understand that women really are into the way a man's fingernails look. She's the only person that ever told me that, so I don't know if it's true or not. But nonetheless, I have not taken her advice. Akira Felix says, Race Jacobson, it's kind of scary how there were debates and a whole Republican primary and Trump won. Yeah, they brushed aside DeSantis. They brushed aside Nikki Haley. They certainly brushed aside Chris Christie, who, of course, is I got to just say, I think he's an opportunist. I mean, he was the truth teller and all that. And then when Trump was going to win the primary in 2016, he jumped on that bandwagon, and then he jumped off the bandwagon when things seemed to be going downhill for the Donald. He didn't try to get back on, which good. I'm glad he didn't get back on the get back on the wagon, because that would have been really, really gross. What do we got going on here? The other day, I had a couple of my cousins commenting on a post I made. My cousins are not very politically educated, right? And I told them as nicely as I could. I said, listen, I love you guys. Please do not put me in this position. and they couldn't understand what position am I putting in. The position you're putting me in is to go after you, to make you look unintelligent, which I don't want to do. I didn't want to do that to them. I love them. They're my cousins, but you can't expect me, because you're my friend, to come on my page. It ruins my credibility if I don't say anything, if I don't correct this, if I just let this comment go, then I look bad. You're screwing with my livelihood at this point. But, to one of my cousin's credit, he apologized, and I thought it was great, and we had a nice talk. So all is well there. But that actually leads me to a broader question that I'm curious if the audience has experienced this. I went over in my head this morning in a conversation with Subby about the MAGA or the Trump supporters that I know personally. Most of them were not politically active prior to 2016. It never talked about politics at all. Now they know about everything from they're experts when it comes to vaccines. They're experts when it comes to trade policy. They're experts on media bias. They're, diehard Trumpers. I'm just curious, is this a common phenomenon? Have other people experienced this, that people who were previously not interested in politics are now very active in politics? I Like Number says Obama militarized people on both sides. Well, I think Obama was a very divisive figure. Obama convinced me that I needed to support Romney, whom I didn't really like, but I just disliked Obama so bad that I thought anybody would be better to get into office. But I didn't see the same amount of people involved. The people I'm talking about specifically got involved in politics when Trump came down that escalator. They weren't involved beforehand. And if I was saying it was Obama, I would have to assume that in the previous 8 years, they would have been out there making statements, but they weren't. Lee Timothy Frazier said she's experienced it the other way. All her girls never cared about politics until Trump got in, and their only personality trait is being lefty people. Okay. Well, Lee, here's the thing. You're not American. So it's a little strange that the British would be very, very excited, about Trump one way or the other. He came down the escalator in 2015. Yes, the primary was in 2016. Jakub Puchala says he was interested in politics before 2016, but barely anyone he knew was. Now almost everyone is, at least partially. Persephone says American politics is everywhere. Okay. Persephone, you're a foreigner and you're behind the scenes, and now you're like coming on, you're making trouble, you're getting everybody all wound up. Of course you're not Persephone. I have to say I'm kidding, because evidently I have this thing where people don't know that I'm joking, which I don't know. My friend Brent used to always say, how don't people know you're joking? Lee, I don't know why you think your name is hard for me. It's not. It's Lee. I know your name. Like Deeper with Diego. Little strange name, but I know what it is. He says most foreigners are involved more in American politics than most Americans are. Oh, American politics affect the world, Manu says. Right-wing folks here love Trump. That's down there in Brazil. It's Frazier. It's not Frazier. Well, I think you're wrong, Lee. If you say it's Frazier, no, you're just wrong about this, Lee. If that's what they're telling you in your family's wrong about the pronunciation of your name. That could be a real problem. My girlfriend, by the way, has the same issue where everybody in her family mispronounces the name. I've known her since I was in 8th grade. I've mispronounced her name the whole time. Now she pronounces it correctly, and we all make fun of her as if she's wrong, but she's not. Race Jacobson says it's Frazier. Yes, it is. That would be likely. What if I came on and said, no. My name is not Mike. It's Mike. That's how you actually pronounce it. It's not Mike. Everybody knows it's Mike. No. I am Mike. That's it. From now on, Mike. People would think I was a bit batty on that because I would clearly be mispronouncing the name. And if they're telling you it's Frazier, they're lying to you. I would take it up maybe with your dad. I don't know who started this. Maybe it goes way back into ancient times into antiquity where they've been mispronouncing it. But either way, Manu, I do not mispronounce your name, so I don't know what why you're feeling that. Deeper with Diego says, is any part of Lee's name spelled correctly? I don't know. You're not being gaslit, Lee. You look it up. I would bet you if you submit your last name, submit the spelling to either any chat GPT, Grok, any AI, and ask what is the correct pronunciation of this name, and they are going to tell you it is Frazier. Okay. And I don't know if it would be gaslit or gaslighted. I'm not really sure about this. Maybe it could be either or. Greg Doherty says Argentina's president is creating money and taking large IMF loans. Some ANCAP. I got to back up. Some ANCAP economists assert that he's a fraud, maybe a rational egoist episode. Yeah, I've actually thought about that, Greg, about discussing that. I just don't know. In order to do it, I have to do a deep dive and really get into understanding it. And that, it's not easy to do. It's really not. I just got done reading Andy Bernstein's book on education. Good book. So I should have an interview coming up with him pretty soon. Robert Naser says he's had people try to correct him. For the record, it's Naser, regardless of whatever any distant Syrian relatives may say. Well, Robert, I mean, I don't know. I say Naser because that's what you say, but I can't tell you how many people that I know that say it's Nasir. I don't know why they would say it's Nasir. There's no accent mark. There's nothing. It sure looks like Nasir to me, but they say Nasir. Maybe we need to get, have a like a convention, like the Constitutional Convention. We could have a name pronunciation convention so that we could get everybody in on the action and we can get this stuff settled once and for all, how we're going to pronounce names. I don't even know if Persephone is Persephone's real name. She's shaking her head no. So Persephone has got us all calling her Persephone, which is not the right name. Lee Frazier wants us to call her Frazier, which is not the right name. So I just don't I don't understand. I don't know what's happening here. Race Jacobson is shocked I get his name right. Why are you shocked about that, Race? Why couldn't I get your name right? I don't understand that. Jonathan Honig read it as Rants. Oh, okay. I don't know why he would say that, but well, whatever. Let's see what we got here. Up, up, up. America's the center of the world. Manu says her name is Emanuela, or maybe it's Emanuela, but I think it's Emanuela, and Manu is a nickname. Well, perhaps we're going to call you Emanuela from now on. We're not going to allow nicknames on this show any longer. You're either going to come here with your real name or you're going to get a severe punishment, which is going to be chastisement from me. That's going to be the punishment. Nobody wants to be chastised by me. You certainly don't want to be ostracized, although I have a very poor record of ostracization. I've attempted it in the past, but I always seem to let people back in. Man Sharma says that Robert Naser's name should be Nasir. I don't know, Man Sharma, why you think that you're going to be the dictator of names here when clearly that is my job. It's weird saying my gosh. I didn't say my gosh, Manu, so I don't know why you would think it was weird for me to say so. I just said it, but it was only in response to your comment. I'm trying to think of something to talk about other than people's last names because I'm guessing that people are getting sick of this, especially the more intellectual of the audience. So what can we come up with? What can be a nice intellectual topic? Let me think. Somebody in the audience here, what the hell is going on there? Kinky Lee? Well, I'm not calling anybody Kinky Lee, that's for sure. I don't know why Manu wants to call her that. I guess that's between the two of them. Maybe that's something you guys can work out in DMs later on. I don't think that this is the proper place. Anyways, somebody in the chat said that the United States is the center of the world. This is where freedom will either live or die. I don't know. I certainly understand the thinking behind that. I get why somebody would say that this is where freedom goes to live or die. I mean, we're founded in liberty. Our founding documents are meant to preserve liberty and to promote liberty. So I get that, but it seems to me that it could take off anywhere. Anywhere that has the proper culture. I guess that first the culture would need to be set up that way. In America, we do have the longest standing cultural tradition of liberty, but the British might argue about that. I mean, after all, that's the fountain home of Magna Carta, the Petition of Writ, the English Bill of Rights, habeas corpus, trial by jury, all that stuff came out of England. So I don't see why they couldn't have that. Greg Doherty says, pick an Elon tweet. Usually a good something. Now the thing went down here. Usually a good shortcut when a conversation dies. Interesting. So somebody posted today the percentage of sex offenders, and it started off with women is like 0.3%. It was very low, whatever. I'm not going to get the numbers right, but I don't care. What matters is that you're going to see the proportions. And then it said men are responsible for 319 out of 1,000 or out of a 10,000, whatever. And then it said that transgender women, meaning men who are identifying as women, commit a 1,000 more of these when compared, in proportion to regular, to your regular men. I'm going to say regular. I don't care. That's what we are. We're regular men. And anyways, I went in, I looked at Elon's Grok, and of course, Grok is not definitive, but it is Elon's AI. And I asked, are these numbers accurate? And it said, no, this is mischaracterizing numbers. These are based on studies that aren't very good, that type of thing. They're deliberately undercounting the amount of transsexuals in order to make it look that way. And, I went in and when I looked inside the comments, and that's what everybody was saying, is that these numbers were just wrong. And the point is that Elon Musk is not a truth teller. He's not a truth seeker. He's a propagandist. I don't know that it's deliberate, but it's the case. He is a propagandist. The fact that the world's richest man feels the need to do that, I don't know. It's gross. It's gross. Yakub Puchala says, if people comment on politics, they mostly comment on politics of their home country and the U.S. All right, fair enough. Let's see. Let's back up. I want to find my friend Subby. Subby wants us to talk about all the Trumpers we know and how most of them are. Well, Subby says he uses a curse word, but I'm trying to cut back on my cursing, so I'm going to say jerks. And yeah, there seems to be a correlation, at least with the people that I know and that Subby knows, that they're not nice people, right? They're just mean people. They attack people. It's very, very odd. But I don't want to get too much into that. I want to actually see what Man Sharma says here. Well, and where'd he go? I lost you, Man. I lost you. Okay. He has a hypothetical question on morality. Suppose someone has committed a crime and got away with it. Should they voluntarily give themselves up? Oh boy. I would need a lot of context on that, Man. I mean, what are we talking about? Crime? Are you talking about somebody that does drugs, that has an open container of alcohol in their automobile, that jaywalks? Are you talking about somebody that commits a robbery? Is it somebody that had committed a robbery when they were 19 and is now 60, got away with it and turned their whole life around? Maybe made restitution, maybe apologized. There's a lot of variables that I would need to know. I've actually thought about that very thing in the past, Man. And I'm not sure about it. I think that it just depends on way too many variables to really discuss here. Jason Adams says he knows 3 or 4 Trumpers that are not jerks, actually. Uncles, hardworking friends. They don't talk about it unless you push them. Generally nice people. Jason Adams, I would like some clarification on that. Are these Trumpers, or are they people that voted for Trump. What I mean is because the people that we're talking about, that Subby's talking about, are people that live and breathe Trump. Trump, can do no wrong in their eyes. It's just, if you criticize Trump, TDS. And Aman Sharma says, all right, true. We can talk about it later if you want. Well, thank you for giving me that permission, Aman. I appreciated that. I only have to talk about it if I want to. I thought you were going to try to strong arm me and say I had to talk about it, like earlier when you tried to tell somebody else how they had to pronounce their name. You've got very totalitarian impulses in you, young man, and maybe we need to work on those. Greg Doherty says, a friend of mine met Elon 25 years ago at a party. My friend is a geek and was the only one who recognized Elon. He was shy and alone. They chatted for an hour. All right. Fair enough. All right. We are 55 minutes into this show, folks. I've done it. I mean, I've run my mouth about irrelevant things. I've tried to be entertaining. The only thing I didn't do was sing and dance, and I'm pretty sure nobody wants to see that. Maybe next time I could flex a pose. I don't know, but we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is we're going to give out the capitalist thought of the day. I'm going to throw out the question that I'm going to come up with and see what if people will go to our YouTube station and whatever, comment is the word I'm looking for. Oh my Lord. So the capitalist thought of the day is, what do I want to say? I don't even know. We talk about so much stuff. Humor. I'm going to focus on humor today. I find humor to be great. I don't like malicious humor, but I love ball busting, as I'm sure everyone here knows. I think that humor would probably flourish in a free society. People need to be able to joke. People need to be able to push boundaries without fear of being punished by their government. If everybody that takes a stage to do a stand-up routine, or every movie that comes out with a comedic bent has to worry about whom they're going to offend and whether the government's going to get involved, you're going to have a real dampening effect on humor. Similarly, if I'm joking with my friends, if my friends, intimate to me they don't like it, I'm going to stop. The difference between the two, of course, is that one has to do with voluntary relationships and the other has to do with government force. Voluntary relationships are good, and people need to be able to negotiate those relationships with the people with whom they have them. The government forcing us how to behave in our voluntary relationships is wrong every single time. Okay, now the question of the day. The question of the day is going to have to do with what I just said, and I'm going to see if maybe I'm wrong. Suppose people volunteer to fist fight each other on their front lawn, their private property. Suppose they say, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to have fist fights on our front lawn. We're going to do it all the time, every day. Should that be allowed? If people want to voluntarily fist fight people in their front lawn, should it be allowed, or should the government get involved in it? The question of the day at the end is not a little weird, Ian, because the whole point is to get you to go to the YouTube station and comment. That's why it's not weird. You always have to remember the purpose, of value to whom and for what. All right, folks, you've been absolutely wonderful today, as usual. I appreciate you being here. Remember, like the episode, share it from YouTube, subscribe to the show, check out The Rational Egoist, check out AmericanCapitalistParty.org, send Mark Pellegrino your well wishes, and I will see you tomorrow with another great show. And in honor of Mark Pellegrino, please check your premises. Peace.